What's up everybody, Matt Magna here with Donna Mention Cars, and I got a special treat for you today. In this video, I'm going to be reviewing this snowmobile. It is none other than a 2012 Ski Doo MXZ 800 TNT. Now this style, as you can see, is the REV-XP. And it's also got e-tec, so it's no longer a carbureted snowmobile. Now what can I say about these? They're pretty fast, and it's got a short track, which makes it pretty maneuverable in the corners, but it's not going to get as much grip, and it's not going to perform as well in deep snow. So without further delays, let's take it for a drive. Not so fast. Cue the intro. If you want to see more reviews of bikes, cars, and toys like this, consider hitting that subscribe button, and also hit the like button if you like what you see. Alright, so let's get this show on the road, trail. So before we get into the performance and all the great riding pleasures of this snowmobile, let's just talk a little bit about the history of the Ski Doo MXZ. I'll even tell you a little bit about Ski Doo, the brand. So really, they are owned by Bombardier Recreational Products, founded by Joseph Armand Bombardier. In 1959, they came out with the first snowmobile. Now, it was originally called the Ski Dog because they wanted to replace the dog sled. But someone had a typo in the brochure, and it ended up as Ski Doo. They liked that name better, and that is why it is called what it is. So, just a quick note, the sled we're riding is not only an MXZ, but it is also a TNT. Now, if you jump ahead a little bit from our starting point in 1959 to 1968, that is when the TNT came about. Now, these sleds were really just made for racing. They were for the track. But TNT stands for track and trail. So their slogan really was win on the track and dominate on the trail. Now, fast forward to 1981. This is where the MX comes from. In that year, they had the MX total suspension on the MX Blizzard. Now this was really good suspension. The rear suspension arm allowed 10 inches of travel, and it was the first long travel big bump capacity design that Ski Doo ever came out with. So this was a big step. Now where does the Z come from? I'm going to tell you about that in just a sec, but I do want to tell you their slogan. Z was the last letter in the alphabet, and it was the last word in performance sleds. So the MXZ sled was given the best Rotax engine and best suspension that Ski Doo had. These things were their best sports sleds they would make. So 1992 is where it all started. First engine there was the 463cc twin, and it was liquid cooled. 95 they had the 440 REV engine. 96 they had a couple more, such as the 583 and the 670. And they also added the S chassis, which had improved suspension. 1999, Ski Doo came out with the ZX chassis, which had even better handling. They replaced the 583 that I mentioned before with the 600cc. But the next important thing that happened was in 2002, they came out with the MXZ 800, which had even more power. But then the biggest thing happened. Everything changed for the sport. In 2002, BRP innovates with their launch of the Ski Doo REV platform. This was huge. You could say this was the most influential snowmobile ever produced. It changed everything. So now the chassis is rider forward, and it set the new standard for the snowmobile suspension and ergonomics. So you sit up higher and you have a more aggressive seating position, allowing you to attack the trails. And it's more comfortable, and the suspension is even better. So really you can lean into the corners more. The ride quality is just vastly improved. And all of this with the REV flew Ski Doo to #1. Now, I was there back in 2002 when the party all started with this. So I was a younger version of myself in 2002. I was at the movies. I was at Die Another Day, the James Bond film. So what happened was he was in Iceland and he barely survives some terrible CGI, and then he's on his way back to the bad guy's base because he wants to go save his girl. So then a guard is just driving by on a snowmobile, mustard colored snowmobile, and then James Bond clotheslines him, and then he commandeers the sled for himself. Now this sled was none other than the 2002 Ski Doo MXZ 800. That's what I think it was. And then that is really the first exposure I had to this REV style of snowmobile, and it was really cool. And that actually is what kind of made us want to get the special edition 2003 Ski Doo MXZ 600HO, which stands for high output. Now this is the special edition James Bond snowmobile that has a special paint job and a 007 emblem. But anyways, the other companies followed suit, and they designed snowmobiles with the same aggressive seating position. So this is where it all started, right here. And Die Another Day is where I first saw it. Now, fast forward to 2009, that's when they came out with the e-tec direct injection. And that's what this sled has that I'm riding right now. Now that made the snowmobile run better, it had less emissions, and it ran more efficiently. The last part of the name of the snowmobile that I'm riding, the 2012 Ski Doo MXZ e-tec 800 REV-XP. REV-XP, now that came from 2007 when BRP launched its ultra-light REV-XP platform for Ski Doo snowmobiles, and they were already the lightest. So this one made them 10 to 15% lighter than what they were making at the time. And they also made the chassis stronger, so no complaints there. So they're not sacrificing its durability, but they are making it lighter, which makes it more maneuverable. So we went over a lot of stuff. Now we're just going to recap. The one I'm riding is the 2012 Ski Doo MXZ REV-XP 800 with e-tec. So what we're working with here is a Rotax e-tec 800cc two-stroke engine. It's got electronic direct injection and a 2-into-1 exhaust, and the horsepower is 150, or maybe even a little more than 150. Front suspension is dual A-arms, and it's got 9 inches of travel. Rear suspension is the SC5. It does not come with the R-Motion like the XRS and the X. Another awesome thing is this is a pretty light sled. The weight's in the mid-400s. Fuel capacity is 10.6 gallons. It's also got electric reverse and electronic fuel gauge, as well as a multifunction digital gauge. And earlier in the day I was riding on a 90 sled, and I was going over trails that weren't even that bumpy, but my back was hurting. And then I switched to this one. I was going over even bumpier trails, and my back was not hurting. It felt great. The suspension is nice and smooth and forgiving, especially over the big bumps. And it's actually a really sporty sled too. So it's got really nice, comfortable suspension, but it's also really sporty. How fast is it? Well, I did tell you it's fast, and it has over 150 horsepower. So on our private test track, as you'll see later, we got this thing to go about 100 miles per hour. Now I'm thinking, bear with me, if it was a little colder and the snow was a little more dry and powdery, packed down nice and good, I think we would get well over 100 miles per hour. But that's for you to find out for yourself. Now if you want to pick one of these up, I just did a little bit of Craigslist searching, and something like this would probably run you around $7,000 right now. Granted, it's the winter season, and this was filmed during the COVID era, so maybe the demand is high because people want to do stuff that is considered socially distanced. You're wearing your snowmobile helmet, you're away from people, that's a pretty good activity. So yeah, just assume maybe you spend around $7,000 for an 800 e-tec of a similar year. So it's not really a lot, but it's not cheap either. Alright, so just to recap, this 2012 MXZ 800 is a really good all-around sled made for one person, and it's really agile and fast, great sharp handling, and it's got some technology from the modern era, meaning it's got the REV seating position, so you're really comfortable, really good suspension, and of course the hand warmer is really good. The windshield is pretty good, protects you from the wind, and the seating position is really aggressive, so you can really get into it and attack the corners. It's really an all-around great sled for a decent value. So if you want a sled that is really sporty, that you can just attack the trails with, but not hurt your back in the process, and not hurt your pocketbook too much, then this is the sled for you. And that's all I got to say on this. Now before we wrap this thing up, just go ahead and enjoy some Ski Doo MXZ accelerations. I hope you enjoyed this Don Dimension snowmobile review. We'll see you next time.